Are Jade Warriors just terrible in patch 8.0? I'm not typically the negative title guy, but in this case it's a legitimate question deserving a legitimate answer. Jade Warriors have been long maligned, but there need to be caveats given in turn. Let's look at what makes them tick and how to get results with them. Recruited for 550 gold and 137 upkeep, on Ultra scale, they march in at 120 entities and 8,280 health, or 69 per entity. Armor is 70 as the baseline without any kind of buffing. Shields of the default unit block 35% of small arms missile fire from the front, and more to the point, early game is likely your only shielded infantry or unit type generally, barring starting army one-shots. Leadership of 64 is very restrained. It's not Skaven level, but it's not fantastic. Speed 28 and charge speed 35 are like a Chaos Warrior level of not speedy. Melee attack begins at 24. This is why the unit is maligned as being unable to kill anything. Attack interval 4.2 seconds is not egregious for sword and metal board infantry. No splash damage whatsoever. Melee defense 34 is high in contrast, but only barely exceeds the Empire Swordsman mediocrity line. Weapon strength 28 is exactly at that line, split base 21, and armor piercing 7. Charge bonus of 12 isn't high, though mass of 125 makes them harder to bowl like pins. This is a Yang Battle Harmony unit, and we'll return to that in a second. Its passive defensive stance is the only standout. Not moving enters the first phase of charge resistance plus 10%, 10 seconds of not moving creates the second phase, which gives armor resistance plus 25% and armor plus 10. Armor aside, I'm pretty sure this means the effective mass rises, making them even harder to bowl over, though that's relative. Light cavalry will struggle even more. Battle Harmony Yang means that a Yin unit within 60 meters will trigger a minimum of leadership plus 4, melee attack plus 4, and melee defense plus 4. Where does that leave us? Leadership 68, Eshin Triad level. Melee attack 28, Orc Boys level. Melee defense 38, like a lot of races, Spearmen at rank 0. This bonus could be raised up to double depending on what kind of lord, hero, or unit is present. Miao Ying in human form would raise it to leadership plus 8, melee attack plus 8, and melee defense plus 8, just so we're clear on how high that can go. So on a ranked 0 unit, that's leadership 74, melee attack 32, or the mediocrity line, melee defense 42, or well into very solid territory. I was of two minds about whether to feature the halberds unit, but there's too many techs applicable to both not to. Let's do a brisk overview. Recruited for 650 gold and 162 upkeep, health and armor start the same. No shields, of course. Melee attack begins at 22 rather than 24. Attack interval 4.6 seconds is slower, but nowhere near as slow as Empire Halberdiers. Melee defense 38 is 4 better at default, but the weapon strength ratio is radically flipped, split base 8 and armor piercing 20. Bonus versus large of 16 is not small by any means, and this results in melee attack 38 and weapon strength 44 against Minotaurs of Khorne. Heavily penetrating, they are thicker armor than the average bull. Charge bonus is 8, which is still a good deal more than some spearmen, and mass is 125 again. Interestingly, defensive stance is retained for extra resistance to charges, and charge bonus versus large and charge reflection are present. Both units have the trait formation attack, and will attempt to remain in an organized formation even when on the offensive. It says melee defense is raised slightly. I don't know if that's just reflected in the stats, but it's actual entity behavior too. In effect, it reduces the offensive output to a point. You won't even notice this against full infantry rectangles, but it will affect things versus, let's say, monsters. In the redline skills, 3 pips in unyielding benefits them like it would Tiger Warriors for melee attack plus 6 and melee defense plus 6. Let's put lords out of the picture for a moment. Ordinary Harmony would mean leadership 68, melee attack 34, and melee defense 44. Does that look more respectable? Any getting to rank 7 and up would benefit from Blades of the Bastion for leadership plus 6, melee defense plus 5, and spell resistance plus 10%. We can't use rank 0 figures for comparison anymore, but that's a lot of holding ability. So it's the tech tree where things get really interesting. Mastery of Yang, a turn 3 obtainable tech, gives leadership plus 4 since it's a Yang unit, and melee attack plus 4 because it's melee infantry. Yang Reflection, besides its juicy plus 5% campaign movement range, gives weapon strength plus 10% while attacking, so that affects melee. Inner Speed gives a minor fatigue reduction and a huge speed plus 20%. Jade Stance is crucial, giving armor plus 15, a very notable increase which makes them much tankier against base damage, along with melee defense plus 4. It takes some effort to go this far or beyond this point, but you get benefits. Drill Training lavishes armor plus 10, leadership plus 6, and melee defense plus 4 for being melee units at all. The Jade Veteran Facility shaves 10% upkeep off, grants recruit rank plus 2 for Yang units, and melee attack plus 4 for Yang units. That's a lot, isn't it? That's a lot. Cathay seems a healthy source of army buffs in general, but the most direct, visible buffs are no doubt from the Alchemist with Lore of Metal and alchemical buffs, and the Gate Master with stat boosts and upkeep reductions, though that needs the caveat, I told you there were some, of being with particular builds. You have to give something up to get the best defensive bonuses for your Jade Warriors. So, how do we use the Jade Warriors? I'm focused on the initial unit for a variety of reasons, mainly because how to use the halberds unit is so blindingly obvious, it doesn't really need a lot of discussion. It is seen as a pure upgrade in every respect over peasant long spearmen, and this is largely correct, and can deal with armored infantry somewhat, and armored and unarmored large troops rather well generally. In fact, we could call it competent even without going into the harmony, redline, and tech buffs at all. But what about the basic ones? These are a so-called Tier 1 unit type, recruitable from a building in a Tier 1 settlement, and not without. Without any further buffing, the province would have a paltry 2 recruitment slots at first. Ho-hum, 2 shiny new Jade Warriors. What do you do with them? The roster not being gigantic like the Skaven roster makes this an answerable question. If the enemy does not have an excess of cavalry or trolls to worry about, and in many cases where it does, your Jade Warriors with shields should be your front line. Move Peasant Long Spearmen and Jade Halberds back so that enemy missile troops, if present, are firing at the Jade Warriors more. In this situation, their job is not to do damage, and they may end up doing very little. It is to hold and to pin. If you're doing orthodox tactics with lots of ranged behind the front line, that works. If you're doing something else, it's probably taking advantage of some of the buffs we've discussed, not least of which is Harmony, and then they really are being relied upon to kill the enemy, at least to a greater degree, which might take a while, but against a lot of opponents, Jade Warriors are decent and hang around a while. The problem is that you aren't really solving the damage problem. They're not that damaging. These aren't even Saurus Warriors. Nowadays you can mix them with Tiger Warriors, and that's a huge help. Beyond that, it comes down to specifics of heroes, like the Alchemist adding a big boost to base damage, default config at least. Magic is a huge deal, and so on and so forth. But primarily, you need to deploy your army to mitigate the enemy's damage, because inflicting it is simpler, and you just want to make the enemy have to fight to kill your troops. You don't want it to be easy. That's what Jade Warriors cause. They are simple, yet difficult opponents for most foes. Respect their limitations, but you're using a Tier 1 unit to tie your enemy into knots. Do that, and then you can shoot the knot at your leisure, and then you win. Everything else is purely a matter of efficiency. The other stuff is desirable, but not necessary. The necessary part is armor 70, decent stats, and 35% missile block shields, and positioning in front. Miao Ying will get away with leaving them in that state for quite a while because she's relying on missile infantry to do her big damage and killing. Just make sure they get some support, and they'll hold ridiculously well. Even if they are luxuries, these are a lot of Yang buffs, and it does help. What you want, ideally, in addition to stat boosts, is weakening the enemy's armor through sundering, lore of metal, and so forth. That's what'll really help. Take care, and have fun being a bulwark against the enemy's ravaging hordes.